Okay, we are live. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today, and thank you to those that are watching live. We are here today as active participants in a movement towards change. Welcome to the discussion, Fight Racism at its Roots, How to Protect Your Child from Developing This Illness. I want to thank the Mighty for its partnership and helping to continue this important conversation for our mutual communities. We all feel it. There has been a worldwide awakening over the past month, but I want to be clear that racism certainly is nothing new. It is embedded in every aspect of our lives, from band-aids to school curriculum to even in cartoons. Today, we are here to listen, learn, and most importantly, come away with actions to move forward to a better tomorrow for our children. I want to take a moment to formally introduce myself to those that don't know who I am. My name is Chanel Fuller. I am the founder and CEO of Miles & Milan, a brand that merges my love of fashion and helping others. My mission is to make parents' lives easier through informative content like today, networking virtually and physically when it's safe to do so in meetups, and last but certainly not least, to create beautiful gender-neutral children's clothing. I have asked these two amazing women that you see here today to join me to lend their expertise and their point of views on today's topics. Child and adolescent psychologist Sharon Herbert, Dr. Sharon Herbert, sorry, and Stanford University postdoctoral research fellow Agana Namani Silva. Thank you both again for your time and your presence. I'm so happy to have you both here. I want to say that I'm looking forward to the open and honest conversation we're about to have today. And I hope everyone watching will enjoy what they're about to hear and come away with valuable assets. Today is about action and the legacy we want to leave behind. I ask that you keep that statement at the front of mind when we continue this discussion. I'm going to stop talking and allow you to hear from Sharon and Agana and their impressive backgrounds and why this conversation is so important to them. Let's kick it off with Sharon. Thank you again for coming. And can you please tell us about yourself, your professional journey, and why this topic is important to you?
Yeah, thank you, Chanel. So I'm a psychologist that works at Children's Hospital of Orange County in Orange, California, and I've been at CHOC for 6 years, and I've carried many roles, but right now I've been focusing on hematology, so bleeding and clotting disorders, as well as I supervise a pretty amazing team that works in the emergency department where we see kids who come in for mental health concerns. I've known that I wanted to be a psychologist very, very early on because I really felt that it suited some of my strengths and some of my talents. And this particular topic is of interest to me because I believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion should be in everything that we do. Conversations with our loved ones, conversations with our colleagues, as well as conversations that we have with our patients.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really important for people like you to be here, to be involved in this conversation. So again, thank you.
Okay.
Agana, I've known you for so long and your background is so impressive. Can you please share your amazing background, what you're doing today, and again, why this topic is important to you?
Well, thank you so much, Chanel, for having me. When you contacted me to participate and on this panel, it was a no-brainer. I think the world of you, and thank you so much for having the space to have this very much needed conversation. So my name is Agana Namani Silva. I was born and raised in Normal, Illinois, fantastic community, 2 hours south of Chicago. Spent my whole life there. I was fortunate to have wonderful parents, Chika and Uzo Namani, who came to the United States from Nigeria to go to Illinois State University, and fortunately, we grew up there and we had a great childhood. And I loved sports, fell in love with sports, and had outstanding coaches growing up who pushed me to become the best version of myself possible. And I was lucky to get a scholarship to compete in volleyball at Stanford, and I played on the team for 4 years. And after school, I always wanted to be a doctor since growing up and having asthma. It was always a dream of mine to pursue medicine because doctors really transformed my life growing up. And I wanted to one day have the chance to make a similar impact. So I was fortunate to compete in 2 Olympic Games for Team USA on the indoor volleyball team. We won a silver medal in 2008. I love playing volleyball. I really enjoyed it a lot, but my desire to pursue medicine just could not be delayed. So I was fortunate to have the opportunity to go back to medical school, go back to school first to finish up my requirements. And I married my husband, Mike Silva, and we have a wonderful daughter. Fast forward a year, and boom, I'm in medical school, and time has gone by fast. And I just graduated, and it's been a great journey, a lot of learning along the way. And I hope to be a surgeon one day. So I'm doing a postdoctoral research fellowship in regenerative medicine and stem cell biology at Stanford. And I hope to really learn a lot. And this topic is very important to me. Growing up, I was fortunate to have wonderful teachers that saw the content of my character and did not use my skin color to make any judgments against me. Same thing with my outstanding coaches. It was based on a system of meritocracy where you worked hard, and if you worked, whatever you work for, you could get. Of course, there are bouts of racism along the way, but I hold on for dear life for the wonderful people in my life that made me realize that it's about who you are as a person and the impact that you make towards others, and the superficial characteristics such as race, gender, all the superficial characteristics, they don't matter at the end of the day. But unfortunately, our society has clouded it with racism, and it has become a situation where it does matter. Racism is a public health issue from a medical perspective. We are in a crisis, and we have to do whatever we can to make the situation better.
Yes. Thank you for sharing, both of you, for sharing your backgrounds. I want to start today's conversation by addressing the movement and the protests that are happening today. We've had protests forever. We've had civil rights. We had the Rodney King protests and LA riots, Ferguson, you name it. It seems like every year there's a necessary uprising in justice, for justice, but it somewhat fizzles through along the way. Agana, what feels different about today's movement?
I think the obvious difference for me is that we are in the middle of a health crisis. We have a pandemic that has been underlying this cause. And if you look at it from a medical perspective, racism is a chronic issue that our nation has faced for centuries. It is a chronic issue. And just like chronic conditions, like I have asthma, and so it's a chronic condition, and there's something that will set it off to lead to an attack, an exacerbation of an underlying symptom. So the pandemic was the inciting event, I think, for us to really bring to the forefront this chronic underlying condition that has just been lingering for years. So I think that's the thing that's different about this time, but I am still really nervous. I don't want things to fizzle out. I really want to use this for action, for good, and to make a difference this time.
Yes, exactly. I love how you tied in your asthma and how something flares up. So that's a perfect analogy that we can say it's always there, and there's something that flares it up.
Exactly.
Sharon, how are you experiencing the shift happening in the country?
There's some semblance of hope as we're seeing some immediate changes. Monuments being taken down or statues being taken down. Also, some shifts in changing the names of things. I think I also feel that there are a lot more people who are just becoming aware. So, part of what Agana is saying is just like the allies are with us and, standing with us and saying, hey, like enough is enough. I think that for a lot of people, we've been at a party we didn't want to be at and people are joining in their like level of awareness. And so with that, we're really hoping that we can continue seeing that movement that Agana had mentioned, that it doesn't stagnate and that we see things bigger, like changing of bills or laws or policies that inherently have systemic or institutional racism or injustice that's kind of in and of itself. And the other piece is, I have to say, and I've said this to many people that I talk to, I love the younger millennials and the Gen Z people. I think maybe, we've had a lot of young Black youth that have been killed in the last decade, if you will, but this feels different. And maybe we just needed to wait to have Gen Z and, the younger millennials get a little older because they are fearless and they're relentless. And we needed exactly that.
That's important. Like the next generation just keeps moving this forward, and that's particularly why we're here today, is to talk about our children. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of parents out there starting the conversation about race and the approach of we don't see color, we're all the same. Essentially, color blindness has been used in the past and the present as a starting point. For me personally, I don't believe in such statements as we don't see color. For me, if you don't see color, you don't recognize the absence of color in your life. And lacking the beauty of diversity keeps you holding only one point of view. So, Sharon, as a child psychologist and adolescent psychologist, what are your thoughts on we don't see color and colorblindness?
Yeah, I mean, we know that in the 60s with the civil rights movement, things really shifted. People were really nervous about talking about race and color, and part of it was because it was associated to some degree with this notion that like by talking about race, like we're racist, and so the ideal became like we don't see color. However, we know, just as you were saying, Chanel, that inherently actually creates and perpetuates racial injustice. We're not seeing what's taken place or talking about what's taken place over centuries. And so there are also some other problems with it. Our brains are designed to see difference. We categorize things. And so if we're trying not to see color, if you will, it actually leads to some anxiety, and it makes it really difficult for us to function, cognitively at the level or optimal level. I think the other piece, which you hit the nail on the head, which is this notion that we don't get to see the beauty of what everybody brings. And because it's likely that because of that, it's really likely that we might react on our own prejudice and biases. So, from, the research standpoint, we know that it actually perpetuates racial injustice. And it's really important to identify and recognize that people are different. It's, kind of like saying, you see, like I have different color eyes, or my hair color, or even as you were talking about being, into fashion, what I'm wearing. And we all should be able to comment on those things because that is what it is.
Mm. Thank you. Agana, do you want to add anything to that statement about your opinions around color blindness?
That was perfectly stated. I don't really have that much to add. I just will piggyback and reemphasize the fact that color blindness is an ideal. It's a utopian society that we all strive to achieve one day, but in reality, we probably will not achieve it. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be more realistic here. Color is everywhere. And like Sharon eloquently stated, that it is an implicit, it's within us to notice differences. It's part of how our brain works. So instead of using that as an exit route, we have to really face the facts and face what we're up against. And stating that you're colorblind is just not going to cut it in today's society, especially now with the corona pandemic. It has affected different races disproportionately. The numbers are there, the data is there. So to say that our society is colorblind is just not being in touch with reality.
Amazing. So, Sharon, going back to you, what are effective ways the parents that are listening today to approach the conversation about race?
I mean, first, I just want to acknowledge it's going to be uncomfortable. It's a hard thing, even for someone who talks about diversity often. I think it still is a hard conversation about how you go about approaching it. However, what we know is you can always ask open-ended questions, and clearly it's going to vary for how old the child is. So for an older child, it's going to be easier to ask directly about race, racism. And then for a younger kid, what we try to do is talk about like the curiosity of noticing difference, and then also thinking about like how can we talk about difference in a way that's actually like helpful or beneficial. And so, I think the biggest thing is going in knowing that one, it's going to be uncomfortable. Two, you might make mistakes, and that's okay because it demonstrates to your kids that it's okay to make mistakes and we can learn from them. And then three, keep it open-ended. See what they know and what they've been learning. Kids learn so much when we're not around and around other people. And so it's, I think having that opportunity to see what they know, and then you can provide additional information after that.
Yes, keep it open and allow your children to come to you with what they know and expand upon it. Perfect. So this is for a question for both of you, whichever one wants to go first, I welcome it. How have you dealt with this topic professionally or in your own home personally?
The ironic thing is that this is nothing new for me. We have been talking about this for a long time, and I'm fortunate to have an outstanding husband, Mike Silva. He was born and raised in San Diego, and he didn't grow up around a lot of people that look different than him. But I think what the beautiful thing about sports is that it was a forced integration. And so by him participating in athletics, he gets to meet people from all walks of life. And that was just an incredible opportunity for him to see people. And what he eloquently said is that we are all the same. And that's what it comes down to. And there's a way to integrate with people that are different than you. There's nothing better than that. The theories and reading and discussing are important. Those are important foundational principles. But as an athlete, I believe in action. I guess as a former athlete, but I always believe in action-based principles. So going out and interacting with people that are different than you, those differences will dissolve right away.
Well, that's like a perfect tee up to like the next question, the next topic that we're going to address today is no matter how open-minded or anti-racist you may think, we've learned to advise over time. And I'm just thinking back to my own personal experiences. And my earliest memory of encountering racism was in a cartoon. Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny. Some of you may be familiar with it. And some of you may be familiar with the statement that I'm about to say, and some of you may not have even noticed it. There's a repeatable scene in which Elmer Fudd shoots Bugs Bunny in the face, and when the dust settles, Bugs appears in blackface with barrettes, and laughter is overlaid over the image. And as a little Black girl who commonly wore barrettes, it was meant to tell everyone that was watching and myself that I was a punchline. Thankfully, I grew up in a home that taught me that I was no one's punchline, and that I was allowed to see that image for what it was and not allow it to steal a piece of my soul. Now, I feel like there's images like that kind of seep into our brains, and that will inherently create hidden biases. Sharon, I'm going to ask this question to you first. What are some of the ways we can identify those blind spots and those hidden biases?
Very nicely laid out. And it actually makes me think of Maya Angelou, who has a quote, which I'm sure I won't say it exactly right, but it really gets at how we just kind of breathe in these biases. So she talks about the plague of racism being being insidious, and that it basically enters our minds as smoothly, quietly, and invisibly as floating airborne microbes in our bodies for lifelong purchase. And what this really means to me is like we take this and we bring it, we inhale this into our bodies and our minds without really noticing it. So yes, it's going to be challenging to address these biases, and it doesn't mean it's impossible. And so part of the first thing that I would say in terms of how do we address it is just being able to tell yourself, we all have biases. It's really important to just have that level of awareness that myself and everyone has these biases. And once you can have that level of awareness, then it's all about perspective taking. And, from there, really working hard on how do I directly address this particular bias. And with perspective taking, it allows for you to better understand a different, group of people. And then you learn a little bit more. And over time, hopefully it reduces the biases that we've all, again, if we go back to Maya Angelou, we just kind of breathe it in.
Agana, do you have any advice to how to coach parents, or how to coach parents to educate their children in situations where they may witness unconscious bias happening around them?
And that is very important. And I love what someone coined. I want to give them the credit, and I can't remember who said this, but this is a time to be an upstander, not a bystander. So you see any injustice around you, and you have the ability to stand up and speak out against it. It is very powerful. I've seen countless times throughout my life where there are opportunities for people to step in and say something or do something, and it just didn't happen. And on the other hand, I've seen countless times where people really took the opportunity to step in and be an upstander and set the standard for how they wanted things to go. And I think the lessons that we've learned so far and what we've been going through for the past centuries, plural, is that we need more upstanders in our society. And the tricky thing is that people are smart. People are able to check their biases more when they're around people that don't look like them. I think the key thing is when you're in circles where there are not a lot of differences, and to step up and stand up for people that aren't in the room. And I think that's going to be very important moving forward.
Amazing, well put. Similar to what you said is pretty much in my house, and what my husband Kobe and I, we have, and there is no such thing as innocent teasing. You may mean nothing by it, but it could leave deep wounds in the person receiving it. So always be reflecting of the words that you say have power. And I love that. I'm going to add, be an upstander, not a bystander. I love that. And going back to pretty much what you said about, diversity, and people be able to check their biases when they have people around them that don't look like them. To understand and appreciate our communities and backgrounds, it requires us to stepping into those networks and families that may not look like us. And this is a time to take inventory and look at who are you breaking bread with, who is in your child's classroom, who are you seeing in your neighborhoods, and really start to understand, how can I add more of those people that are going to enrich my life and my way of thinking. So Sharon, what things are you doing on a daily basis to access diversity?
Where I grew up, it was more of like black and white, and there were other folks of different ethnic backgrounds. And what I found for myself, although I am not an Olympic athlete, I was an athlete as well. And I do think that gives you an opportunity to be exposed to people of various backgrounds. And so because of that, and, going into college and playing sports as well, I think that it really allowed for me to expand my group of individuals who are around me. And it's really important to me. And I would say that, if my friends were listening, they would always say that I'm always trying to talk about diversity in lots of ways. And also just getting to know some of their family practices, cultural practices, because to me it is really important. So not only is it just ensuring that my close friend group is quite diverse, and then just by virtue of doing athletics, that helps with that. And also is just having conversation about things, reading, and really seeking the information out, because I think it is invaluable in my life.
Amazing. Agana, you touched about sports and how that's been a place to enrich your understanding and being exposed to different diverse people. But given the complications of sheltering in place in COVID-19, and gatherings are not being promoted right now, how are there some ways of accessing diversity in today's world that you can recommend to those watching?
Yeah, I like your public health plug. Very important in this day and age to keep sheltering, keep your mask on. Very, very important. But when we do have the opportunity to interact, I think all the advice we've given is very important. The forced immersion, the forced integration is clutch. It's crucial. But with regards to what we do today, I think having conversations, luckily we all are able to have this wonderful conversation today. Technology is awesome. Take advantage of technology to connect with people. I know that through different forums, through classrooms, through educational experiences, you can meet people, ask the teachers for your kids, oh, what does the roster look like? Who's in our class? Start to reach out that way via email. Social media is a great way to reach out, but I also want to caution people with social media. I think that it's important. I think it's important to pledge and to make a statement, but I don't think that that's going to pay the bills this time. A black box, a hashtag, a statement is not going to cut it. Words are meaningless if you don't do anything about it. So I really like our discussion today because it's action driven, and we just have to be action driven right now and take stock of who's in your circle. Who do you interact with on a daily basis, and ask yourself why. Why is it like that, and what can you do to make changes? And for me, I know I haven't had the chance to interact with a lot of my friends and family members right now, and it's been really hard, but hold on to the good moments. I hold on to my childhood with my parents. They were fantastic in raising us. We grew up, I call it the international house. Everyone was welcome. My dad worked at Illinois State University for decades, and he had everyone come over to our house from all walks of life. And I'm proud to say that by the time I got to college, I met everyone, and I'm so proud of it. And I took for granted that opportunity, but that's the reason why I am who I am today. That immersion at an early age is crucial. So I know we can't have people over right now. We have to keep sheltering, but really broaden your circles. I think that will provide invaluable lessons for your children, for your family.
I love that. It's may not be able to open your homes, but you can open your heart, and realizing that you can learn something from someone. I love that. Sharon, do you have anything to add? Any other ways that we can continue to understand and be exposed to diversities in today's COVID world?
I think she said that beautifully. Honestly, I'm not going to add any more.
Yeah, perfect. Well, speaking of learning and self-education, this topic is something that we have touched on offline a little bit. As far as the Great Awakening, there are non-Black people that are oftentimes approaching their Black friends in a state of virtual trauma, asking them to educate them on things that they were not aware of. And I personally have experienced some outreach that has been truly sincere, and others that have been, I mean, there's no other way to say this, eye-rolling, head-shaking, comical. So, I want to take this time right now to touch upon those things, and those people that haven't yet reached out and feel that they don't know what to do. Agana, where has anyone ever reached out to you in these past couple of weeks that has been appropriate? And if you don't mind sharing any examples of things that might not have, that I might have missed the mark?
No, that's a great question. For me, I'm trying to look at this positively, and if anyone reaches out, that's great, and that's a big step. And if anyone doesn't, that's okay too. For me, I'm more of an action-oriented person, and the key thing is our legacies. What do we do on a daily basis? If I reach out to someone and say, I hear you, I see you, I stand with you, that's great. But at the end of the day, what are you doing on a daily basis to show that? And some wonderful people reached out to me throughout my life. And the ironic thing is they're great. They are action driven, they are action oriented. And I think that's really important. So me, I'm happy when people reach out and I'm happy to have the conversation, but I don't really take those words to heart because I want action. I want to see what you're doing on a daily basis. What have you done to make a difference?
Awesome. Sharon, do you have any examples in the last week or over your life that you want to share?
Yeah, and it's been a balance. So I've had some people who've reached out and recognized that it's likely I would be struggling and just have said, I'm here for you, I'm with you. And, to Aguna's point, are taking some really serious steps and being very action oriented. And then, I've also had people who've reached out and asked if I was okay. And, I think with a lot of my friends, Black friends, it's just like, no, we're struggling. And so, yes, we appreciate the, reaching out. And sometimes it feels like it's not really hitting the mark in the sense of, I'm really struggling. I'm continuing to see Black youth be murdered, and also with COVID as well, as Aguna pointed out, we're being affected disproportionately. So it's been really hard for Black people, and it's really nice and very heartwarming when someone reaches out and then also talks about some of the steps they've taken. I have a really good friend who's really taken many steps, not only just reaching out to me, but also changing, thinking about what she wants to do with her daughter in terms of neighborhoods they want to be in and books, and also what's that next step for donating and whatnot. So seeing that is very heartwarming.
What advice would you give everyone listening on how to be thinking about the feelings of their Black peers dealing with this conversation and with their own feelings, and when is it appropriate to share emotional fragility?
It's truly a fine balance, because I do think that there are going to be some people who are going to be open to really wanting to hear what their non-Black peers and friends and family want to say. I think, it's nice to be kind of put in the forefront of thinking about how, me specifically, I'm feeling and doing with everything, and not having that pressure to feel like I have to teach everyone about like what it's like and whatnot. And so, I think that part of it is if, being invited to have a talk about like the emotions that you might be experiencing, and, finding ways for, some time to allow for this person who you care about to be able to just feel like as a Black individual. So like allowing them to just feel and talk about what they're going through. So again, a balance of both, of just, kind of listening, and then if being invited to, share your own perspective at that point as a non-Black person, then going ahead and sharing.
So we're coming up to the final thoughts here and wrapping up our discussion. And I started off by saying, today is about action and the legacy we want to leave behind. Agana, what recommendations do you have for the audience that can create actionable change in America? You mentioned you're a person of action. What things would you say can help us take those steps forward?
No, I think you got it right. Action, action, action. But what specific steps can we take? Mm-hmm. I think you touched on it earlier. What does your school look like? Who do you socialize with? Where do you go? What do you read? What do you watch? What do you see? I believe in exposure, and I believe in repetition, and there's no cookie cutter formula in how to get it done, because we are a product of our environments. And so this is time where we're going to have to be more of an active participant in our environment and create other environments and go out there and reach out to other people. There are so many opportunities, even at the store when you interact with people and you just say, I see you, I say hi, reach out, look them in the eyes. There's so many ways that we can connect as a society, and just don't let that opportunity pass you by. When you see someone that's different than you and you have the chance to interact with them, don't let that opportunity pass you by. And I think what also I'm a victim of as well is stay away from the echo chambers. That's not going to get things done. We have to step out of our comfort zone and interact with people that have different views than we do. We have to interact with them in a respectful, civil way and to come up with a plan to move forward. Echo chambers aren't going to get it done this time. We have to reach out. We have to be uncomfortable and reach out and seek different perspectives. And again, I'm being a little bit broad here because we don't know what we're going to get. We don't know what opportunities are going to come our way, but you'll know the opportunity when you see it. When you see someone different than you and you have the chance to interact with them, go ahead and interact with them.
Yes, I love that. What is that? What is that phrase that I always think about it? No growth comes from staying within your comfort zone. Step outside your comfort zone and natural growth will happen. Sharon, do you have anything to add to that comment? What actions can we take to move forward?
I mean, as a parent, in addition to what Agana is saying, is talk to your kids about race and racism. And yes, as I said before, and we've talked about, it's going to be really uncomfortable. And I think the other thing that I would say is to not let fear guide what you're doing. And I'm going to give an example of something that probably is going to sound a little wild, but I'm going to reference Harry Potter. And I know with everything that's happening with regard to the comments that the author had made with regards to trans youth, I do not condone that, but I do want to highlight that's particularly something that the premise of the books. And it's all about like Lord Voldemort, who people were so afraid to even say his name. So he who must not be named. And I think racism is in some ways similar. We don't talk about it, and it has so much power by not saying it that unfortunately we aren't moving forward. And I think this time where we need to talk about it. We need to remove power from the name so we can actually start digging into our own things with regard to our biases and prejudice. And hopefully we can walk away from or even toward the fear that we have so that we can really start making change and with regard to all the things that Agana said.
Thank you. And before we move on to taking a few questions from the people that are watching, and I invite those that are watching to please add any questions that you may have. We can take one or two in the comments, so go ahead and do that. From everything that we talked about today, what is one tip that you want us to take away and remember? Agana, can you start?
I believe in repetition as a former athlete. So again, please step outside of the box, step away from your black box that you posted, step away from your hashtags and seek action. We need you. We need everyone. It's going to take a collective effort to make things better. And the beautiful thing is that we all have something to add. No one's an expert in this. I have had a lot of experience as a Black woman in the US with racism, but just because you haven't had that experience doesn't mean that you can't be an active participant. There are many ways that we can all make a difference, and it starts with action. What are you doing in your everyday life to make a difference? And we all have the chance to make an impact. And the beautiful thing about teams is that everyone plays a different role, and we come together to make this synergistic product that has the ability to make a difference. So contribute to the synergy however you can.
Awesome.
And there are just so many opportunities for that.
Love it. Sharon?
I mean, she and I are on the same page in thinking about teaming and how you go about this. My team, if they're watching, they know it. And Really, it's all about putting, with what she's saying, the underlying premise is like being aware. And so that our first step is just saying to ourselves, yeah, I have biases and I'm ready to, if I follow Anagana, I'm ready to take that action. And so if I had any tip, please, take that time to come with us, join with us in the sense of level of awareness, because I too have some work to do. And I'm hoping that we can really start leading this charge together as a team and working to make change happen.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now I'm going to take a few questions that are in the comments here because we do have some time for that. Okay, C. LaFell Rogers. I hope I said that name right. I apologize if I did not. Ladies, do you have any authors, speakers, or books, blog articles to help us brush up on systemic racism? What can we do to be proactive? I just summarized that, but you have the question there.
I want to give a shout out to, sorry to interrupt, I got excited because I know Camille, she's fantastic. She's been a lifelong friend of mine and I love her to pieces. She's an incredible person and has been a wonderful source of inspiration for me throughout the years. So I was excited to see her name. Sorry to interrupt you, Sharon.
No worries.
Sharon.
No worries. There are some really good books that are out that I think are hot right now. One is Anti-Racist, which is by Dr. Kendi. And then there's also one on white fragility by, what am I blanking on her name? Robin DiAngelo. And then there are several others, but those are really two that I would, are good places to start.
Mm-hmm. Agana, do you have any?
Yeah, I don't have any books off the top of my head, but I really believe in just having honest conversations, taking the time to reflect on your own experiences. I think this world we live in 150 characters sometimes, and it's hard to step out. But one thing that has been really helpful for me in my medical circles is reading the hashtag Black in the Ivory. And I think those stories there translate in other realms of life. It's not only, if you take what they're saying, the core of what they're saying, you can be able to extrapolate it to other things. And I've been moved by that thread. It's been very therapeutic to read. It's been painful to read, but I think we need to be uncomfortable. We need to read those things and be like, okay, how has a similar situation happened in my life and what did I do about it? I think it starts there, especially now that we can't really interact with people, taking the time to reflect, doing that gut check, because it's easy to be like, oh, I haven't done that, it's not me. But really taking the time to do that gut check and ask yourself, what did I do in that situation? It's very important.
Awesome. Thank you for that hashtag. Thank you for those books. I also want to add that, going back to our youth, I just recently posted a list of books that you can read to your children that will help maybe open up the conversation of diversity. If you go to milesmilan.com and go to the newsletter, it's the latest link, and there are a list of books there that you can pre-order as well. And I have one question from, that looks like another question. Okay, I have one question that I had actually sent in offline from someone that's going to watch this later. So this conversation that we're having today is going to live on the Mighty site. So if you enjoyed what you heard here today, please send the link along to any friends or family that was unable to attend and listen. But I have one question in, it's particularly for the both of you, but Sharon, I'll ask you to start with this one, is what is the recommended age to start the conversation about race? Like, as early as maybe a toddler? Like, what do you think it's a good time to start the question?
As soon as possible. We know the research suggests that we even babies can they differentiate their parent based on race early as like 6 months. And then we also know that they can, tell the differences between different races, even when we're thinking toddler. And some of the biases and what they learn in the community kind of cements by maybe even 12. So starting that conversation early on is really important. So you can talk about it with an infant, but reality is like really having those conversations, looking at the books that you have on your recommended list and starting that very early on. So, 1, 2, to really weave it into like life. So the other piece is if you start doing doing this earlier on or having conversations early on, it becomes part of like your family culture of having discussion. And so if we're thinking about action, to Aguna's point, I'm going to like nail that home as well. But the idea is that we are really embedding it in everything that we do, because we know culture diversity is in everything that we do. So very early on, as soon as possible. And if we're reading books to our kids at night, you can be doing that, when your kid is a baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's important to start as early. And I actually just recently watched a podcast where they talked about decolonizing your bookshelf and making sure that your bookshelf, even though your kids are young and may not be in preschool and may not be in elementary school, make sure that the books that you're reading to them shows the world around them, and making sure that you seek out those books. There are not many, sadly, but more and more authors are out there that are writing bestsellers and things that are top, that are key to this topic. So just making sure that you're seeking out books of diversity for your littles. That's about all we have today. And I just want to say thank you guys again for your time, your point of view. This has been amazing. Again, I want to thank the Mighty for this partnership and continuing this conversation and allowing people that what they heard today, continue it outside of this space and talk to somebody that they may be at the coffee shop with their mask. I'm going to say that for Agana and for you. But I just want to say thank you for those who are watching. Again, we are all here to be active participants in a movement towards change, and we have to continue to learn. And I just want to leave everybody with this. Let's teach our children early what we may have learned late. And I am so grateful. Just be safe, be well, and enjoy and have a happy and safe 4th of July. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.